Everyone, welcome to this educational event as we discuss navigating keto through the holidays. My name is Sarah Franklin. I'm a person living with epilepsy and I work for the Epilepsy Foundation.
And my name is Monica McChesney. I'm the ketogenic dietitian at Children's of Alabama.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Avery. I am the medical manager for KetoCal, and I work at Nutrition North America. I oversee our medical affairs with our epilepsy category, and I have been working with Nutrition and KetoCal since 2015. I am so excited that I can be here with Monica and Sarah to be talking a little bit more about KetoCal, Nutrition, and the medical ketogenic diet. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes, if that's okay, to talk to you guys about what KetoCal and Nutrition are. Nutrition is part of the Danone family, and for those of us here in the United States, that's Danone yogurt, because I know everybody hears Danone and it's like, what is that? So Danone is actually a global leader in food and nutrition, and we believe in the power of nutrition and the positive difference that it can make in people's lives. For over 125 years, Nutrition has been creating advanced medical nutrition for consumers and those who care for them. We developed KetoCal in 2001 with the help of key experts at a major US medical center to help manage patients with refractory and intractable epilepsy on the medical ketogenic diet. And the product that we make, KetoCal, can be used as a sole source of nutrition, either as a tube feeding or you can consume it orally. It can be consumed as a snack, or you can actually make delicious recipes with it too. It is a medical food that it comes in both powder and liquid forms and can be used in all varieties of a medical ketogenic diet. And a large part of our mission here at Nutrition is to increase awareness of the medical ketogenic diet, which is what I'm very excited that we're going to do here today with Monica, who is going to give us a little bit of an idea of what the medical ketogenic diet is and how it works. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Monica.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ellen. So the medical ketogenic diet is a high fat, moderate amount of protein, low carbohydrate diet. It's a calculated ratio based on fat grams to carbohydrate and protein grams combined. So for example, if you had somebody who was on a 3-to-1 ratio, that would mean they would be receiving 3 times the amount of fat to carbohydrate and protein combined. So the theory is that, right now, all of us are running on glucose metabolism. So with keto, we change the body's energy, the fuel source, from glucose to fat. When the body runs off of fat, it produces ketones. And what research has shown, there's a couple of mechanisms of actions of how it works, but the blood ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier, and that has what has been shown to stop/inhibit seizure activity.
And Monica, I know we were talking about, the whole year, there's all kinds of holidays that present different nutrition challenges, but the fall and the winter, there are tons of holidays, whether that's Halloween or Thanksgiving, Christmas time, all different kinds of holidays. So we're going to dive into a little bit of that in a minute, but let's first go over, when is the keto diet recommended for a patient?
Yeah, sure. So it varies from patient to patient, not patient to patient, I'm sorry, provider to provider, as well as diagnosis. So some providers will recommend the diet after 2 failed anti-epileptic drugs. And there are several diagnoses out there that the ketogenic diet is the primary way to manage that diagnosis. So it really just kind of depends.
All right. Thanks, Monica. Another question that I have for you. Are all ketogenic diets the same? Do they look the same? Does every patient's diet look the same? I mean, if Sarah and I both went on a medical ketogenic diet, would we be eating the same foods?
Good question. So it's very different. The diet is individualized from patient to patient. 2 8-year-olds certainly aren't the same, and 2 2-year-olds certainly aren't the same. But we make sure to individualize it to that specific patient to meet their individual nutrition needs.
And if a child can't eat by mouth, what ways can the keto diet be delivered?
Yeah, so if a child cannot eat by mouth, there are two other options. So you have an enteral option, either being, a gastrostomy tube or a nasogastric tube. And then if the gut is not functioning and we need to do parenteral nutrition, that is also an option as well.
Okay. And so if someone were to start the diet, how do you know if it's working? How long am I going to have to find out if this diet's working for me or not? Because I know we all like things that work quickly, but
Yes. So keto does take some time. And once again, it depends on the patient, but overall research consensus is about 3 months. We tell parents up front, hey, we're going to commit to 3 months to see if we're going to see any change. And within those 3 months, it does take some fine tuning. Things may be adjusted once again to meet that patient's needs. So yeah, fine tuning definitely within those 3 months. And then that's when, we have the whole team has a conversation with family, like, hey, is this working? Is it not working? Do we want to move forward?
okay, great.
And if a child is approved to initiate or start the keto diet, what are the first steps? Do they go meet with you first? What does that look like?
So we initially see them in our clinic, in ketogenic diet clinic with myself and then epileptologist and our nurse practitioner. And we, talk to them about their medical history, that sort of thing. And then we have to get a bunch of metabolic labs just to make sure there are no contraindications for the diet. And then once all labs are back, I contact them and we set them up for an inpatient admission to the hospital.
Okay. So once they get admitted to the hospital, they get started on the diet. You could give them 3 months to try it out. It's working. Now, how long do I have to stay on the diet once it's working?
So
Is this something I'm on for life?
Once again, it really depends. It really depends and varies on patient to patient. Research, several years, well, it's been a while now, would say 2 years on the diet, and then we need to start weaning off. But now we're keeping patients on the diet for much longer than that, especially with those diagnoses that they have to be on the diet for life. So after those 2 years, we do a renal ultrasound and we do a DEXA scan to check the bones, just to make sure there's no breakdown. And also in between those 2 years, we're getting lab work and following up on that. So as long as all of that is within, normal limits and everything looks great, we just keep them on the, and it's working. Obviously, we want to make sure it's working. Then we'll keep them on as long as, the family is willing to keep them on.
Is that a strict diet, or does it get more liberalized over time? Or
with kids, I will say, we are very restrictive within the first couple of years, especially, in infants. You want the brain to develop as, best as it can. And you want to get, I guess, the most bang for your buck, so to speak. You want to make sure you're really protecting the brain. So it can be liberalized to like more of a modified Atkins, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. So yes, it can be liberalized, but once again, it just kind of depends on the patient.
Okay, thanks.
And I know we've been talking a lot about kids. You work at a pediatric hospital, level 4 epilepsy center, but what about adults? Is this a management option that they can use as well? Can they be on the keto diet for epilepsy?
Yeah, so adults can definitely use the ketogenic diet, medical ketogenic diet, for the management of their epilepsy. It's a little bit different for adults. We don't usually go as high as the ratio with adults. And then too, lab work is a little bit different as far as what they need to get prior to starting. So overall, diet is essentially the same with just a few minor differences.
Great. I know some adults would definitely want to look into that as well. What about, I know we've just also been talking about food and like some food choices. What about supplements? Are there any special supplements that patients have to be on when they're on a medical ketogenic diet?
Yeah, great question. So the diet is not a typical, diet. It's very, much lacking in calcium and vitamin D because you aren't getting a lot of dairy. And then as, most if you're not aware, most people, who are on anti-epileptic drugs, they compete for the absorption of vitamin D. So a lot of our patients, most of my patients are on calcium and vitamin D supplement, as well as just an age appropriate multivitamin. And then we get lab work too, to see if there's anything else we need to add, such as potassium or phosphorus, based on what their lab work shows. So a lot of supplements.
Okay. As a fellow dietitian, I appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. And besides food, what other things have to be changed when starting or initiating the keto diet?
Yeah. And this is something that most parents don't really think about until, we bring it to their attention, but medications is a huge one. It's really hard to get kids to take medication at baseline. So they sweeten it, right, with all, to make it taste good, bubble gum, grape, so we've got to make sure that all medications are in a tablet form or in their lowest carbohydrate form, which is, tablets, staying away from any elixirs or syrups. And then also another thing to think about is anything that you put on your skin. So like lotion, face wash, that sort of thing. Our skin is going to absorb a percentage of those, carbohydrates. We don't really know how much it's going to absorb, but it can, and it has affected ketosis in some of our kids. So that's just something to be mindful of as well.
Okay. What about drinks? I know like some kids are big juice drinkers, some kids are soda drink. Like, do drinks have to be changed?
Drinks also have to be changed. We recommend no, sugary beverages. So water is really, there are a bunch of options out there now as far as flavored waters, carbonated waters that are out there. So most of those are going to be okay. Water with a few drops of lemon juice, unsweetened, uncaffeinated tea, that's going to be okay. Diet drinks, I kind of tell families you can do that if they're made with sucralose, but also some parents want to stay away from that, and that's fine too. I just give them that as an option, and I just leave it up to them if they, want to go that route. And then any sugar-free electrolyte water, and then unsweetened coffee as well.
What about, you mentioned this earlier a little bit, but we'll get more into it. What are the main differences between the medical keto diet and the modified Atkins diet?
Yeah, good question. So ketogenic diet is going to be more restrictive than the modified Atkins diet. Modified Atkins diet is strictly restricting carbohydrates. There's not a fat amount that you've got to make or a protein amount that you've got to, meet. It's really just solely restricting carbohydrates, and you're only measuring foods that contain carbohydrates. So it's a little less restrictive, and anywhere between 10 to 20 grams of carbohydrate per day.
Okay. Is there anything else that patients have to worry about on modified Atkins, or just only carbs?
So it's just only carbs. It's really loose. I don't like to use it a ton. I mean, I will, but it just, I like specific recommendations for fat and protein because I'm a dietitian and I'm type A. So, I like to give those recommendations, but from a medical, definition of it, it's solely restricting carbohydrates.
Okay. What tips and tricks do you have for parents, or even school personnel, if for parties, at holidays, like Sarah said, we've got Hanukkah, we've got Christmas, Halloween, trick-or-treating, even, any holiday, Easter, Valentine's Day, what are families supposed to do during any holiday, birthday, we're known to celebrate holidays with food.
Right.
It's a given.
Right.
Holiday food. What tips and tricks do you have for our families?
It's definitely something that families have to think about, and I always let family know that I'm going to provide them with a letter of medical necessity to give to the school, to give to the teacher, to let them know, hey, this is the diet that my child is on. And it goes into a little bit of detail about what the diet is, so they have a little bit of understanding. And two, if the teacher can tell the family ahead of time, hey, we're having a party on Friday to celebrate, whatever the holiday may be, that gives me enough time for family to contact me and be like, hey, I need a recipe for a birthday cupcake, and I can get them one. And the Charlie Foundation is great because they have a lot of recipes on there for things like that. And I will say, food companies have gotten smart because they've heard of keto, and it's becoming more popular. So there are more options out there for our kids as far as, suckers that are appropriate, for Halloween, that sort of thing. And then two, I also encourage families, maybe we don't use the food for Valentine's Day maybe we use stickers or erasers or fun pencils, something like that, just so we can take the food part out of it. But there are definitely options for them when they're at school. We just kind of have to know ahead of time. So planning is the biggest thing.
That's a great idea. I know that we also have blog tips and different ideas for our families on what to do for the holidays. So the Keto Cow website is a great resource if anybody wants to check that out too. Where can viewers learn more?
So like you mentioned, Keto Cow Nutrition, and then the Charlie Foundation, and then Matthew's Friends is another great website for any resources, recipes, that sort of thing, help, for families.
That's great. And if you would, I would encourage anyone listening to, if you have not talk to your doctor about whether or not this would even be an option for your child, or if you yourself have epilepsy and you have questions about it, make sure to bring questions up to your doctor about medicine. Make sure to, adhere to taking medicines that they've prescribed. And if they're not working, don't settle for seizures. Keep asking questions, whether that's a different management option like the keto diet or anything like that, because we know that fewer seizures or eliminating seizures it's really important to people with epilepsy.
Absolutely.
And then thank you, Monica and Ellen, for helping go through these questions. I know even as someone living with epilepsy, until I worked at the Epilepsy Foundation, I didn't realize how helpful the medical keto diet can be to many patients living with epilepsy. So it's really good to go through these detailed questions. And I do want to thank Nutricia for sponsoring this educational event. And I would also like to encourage everyone, as we look toward the holiday season, a busy time of year, make sure to learn seizure first aid at learn.epilepsy.com and know what to do if someone you love or a family member or friend is having a seizure. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and stop recording.